Hi there, I'm Birgit O'Connor, and welcome to my studio. Now, I've created a series of lessons that I think you're really going to enjoy and are a lot of fun to do. This is great for kids, young adults, or anybody just getting started in watercolor. What we're doing is getting acquainted with the medium, moving water and color around, being successful, and having a lot of fun. So as you can see behind me, we're not necessarily going to dive into those because those are on different kinds of materials, but it's the same idea, same technique. Those are just a little bit more elaborate. So we're going to start today with a ruby crowned kinglet. And you can always, you don't have to be a birder to know what this is. You can just use a bird out of your back door there, and you could change the colors if you like. And one thing you might want to use is a permanent Sharpie marker, so we can put the eye in or maybe a few little details without the color smearing. And I think you're going to have a lot of fun. So let's get started.
For this painting, we're going to do some ruby-crowned kinglets. They're the smallest of the songbirds, and they're really cute. First, we're going to start with a really simple circle. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can be a little off, but that's basically what we're going to do. Before I start painting, I'm going to practice my circles on a scratch piece of paper. It's basically just a circle with a little beak and a circle for an eye. And then the little legs will be about here. Just think of this as a little warm-up. And then let's put a branch in here so the bird has something to sit on. So why I'm really thinking more of a circle rather than trying to be perfect is I want to give you a shape that all we're going to do is add some water in here and let the water do the work for us. Now let's add another little bird and change the shape and make it look a bit more like an egg. Then we'll give him a little crown on the top, circles for the eyes, and since he's looking straight at us, the beak will be right in the center. And then he'll have his little legs coming down. So that's basically what I have in mind, and let's see if you can see the line drawing. Something like that, and that. Now let's go over to the watercolor paper. I've already got them drawn out, the same basic shapes, and let's start thinking about our painting. Now I'm going to be thinking about what brush I want to use, and I'm going to use the one that came with the set because we're working with simple shapes. I think I'm going to keep the crown on this one and go a little more neutral on this other one. So I'll take my brush, dip it in the water, bring it to my table or a palette, then add a little brown and maybe a little yellow into it, and make a nice little puddle. Now I don't want it to be either too yellow or too brown, just a nice soft color, and then I'll take a little blue and put it on the side. And maybe I'll even take some of that yellow, bring it down here, and then add just a little bit of the blue. So I'm looking for a color I like, and I might add a little more yellow and brown back into it until I find the right combination. Then I'll clean off my brush and then go into the blue. Now I don't want my blue to go into the yellow and then end up green, so I'm trying to keep them separated. And I might take some of that blue, bring it into that combination just to tone it down a little bit. Then for this little one over here, we'll be doing what we basically did with the wisteria, adding our water first and then the color. Now I want to leave the eye dry, otherwise it's going to turn into one big blob. Now for the size of the shape, I can continue to use the smaller brush, or if you have a bigger brush, you might want to use that and then just fill in the shape with clean water. We're just going to fill in the inside and bring the water right up to the pencil line. Just get a nice little puddle inside the bird. Then we'll take our color and just drop it in. And just watch it move in the water. Just like that. You don't have to overthink it. It's not very hard. Just play with the water and color. Now this particular paper takes a little longer to dry because it's got a slicker surface and it has more wood pulp in it, which for what we're doing creates some really wonderful effects. Then using our blue, I'm going to take a little bit of that color, bring it over to the side, and then I'm going to add it into my bird. Now, if you wanted, you could even make this a bird any other color that you want. You could make it pink, blue, yellow, red, whatever you like. But since I'm working on a kinglet, I'm going to try to stay to something that's fairly close to what we actually see. So using the blue combination, I'll just drop it into the water, going along the pencil line, and let it run into the yellow. I'll go around the eye and leave that area dry, and wiggle the brush just a little. And since the yellow and the blue will mingle, we might even get a little shade of green, which will be just fine. Now this one's going to be a bit more simple, very neutral, and it won't have a crown on its head. In fact, this is going to be a little female. And the reason why they would be more neutral is if they're sitting on eggs or a nest in nature, that way they're not as obvious. Then to give it more shape, I'm going to take some of that blue color and bring it right under its tummy where there's less light. And then we'll leave the eye alone until it dries. And then we'll go on to this little one. And for this one, we're going to basically do the same thing, but I want to keep the water more towards the center and the bottom. Now I might not bring as much yellow into it. I want it to be a bit more toned down. So I'll take that yellow, bring it along the sides, let it run into the water in the center, and then I'll take some of that blue color, bring it into the middle and along the bottom. So this is going to be a little different than the one we just did. Just take your time, there's no rush, have fun with it. Let the color mingle, and I think I'm going to go up along the top and around the eyes and leave those dry too. Now I'm just going to take those lines so they're connected, and I'm paying attention to how much water I have in the center. Now for the crown, I could make it a yellow one, or since I'm thinking more of a ruby-crowned kinglet, I'll make it more red. To make it more interesting, I think we're going to use the combination of both. So I'll take a little yellow and bring it to the bottom of the crown here, and then bring in some of my red, and add it to the top. Now you can use whatever red or orange that you like. It doesn't need to be exact. And I still can't add the eyes until everything else dries. What I can do is start thinking about the legs. And they're a little black, but I don't want them to overpower the little birds, and that's all we see. So I want them to be dark, but not too dark. So I'm going to mix all the color I have together, and then with the very tip of my brush, I'll just pull those little legs down and then add the toes. Just like that. And then we'll do the same thing here. And once we get the eyes and the beak in, it's all going to pull together and make sense. Now I'd like to put the branch in, but I can't really do it while the feet are still wet, so I need to let that dry. Now if you have a hairdryer, you can go ahead and use that, or you can take your brush and try to lift out any of the extra water by just touching the little puddle. So let's go ahead and let that dry. Now it's still a little damp, but I think we can work with it. Now to make it a little easier to get the eyes in, I'm going to use a permanent Sharpie marker. Now you can also use a brush, but you might end up with an eye that's too big, but you can do it either way. Now I think I'm going to use the very fine tip of the pen because that way I get more control, or you can use whichever pen you like, whatever works the best for you. And I want to leave a little white shine inside the eye to give it its personality. It just makes it so much easier to handle. And then let's go ahead and get the eyes in over here. Now that was really simple. We just have our shape, put the water in there, let the color blend, and then get the eye in, and look what we have. and then a little beak. We're going to use that pen and just pop it in. And let's add a little detail under the crown so it really stands out. And if you wanted, you could even use that pen and bring a little bit of that black color down into the legs. And let's bring a little detail from the eyes coming down to the beak. And since it's looking directly at us, we really can't see it too well, so we're going to just add a little circle for the beak. And maybe just touch a few little spots on the side to give the impression of wings. And that should do it. Something like that. And maybe I'll add just a little bit more of that color underneath the crown and maybe on the sides, just to make some areas stand out a bit more, but we don't need much. And then let's start thinking about a branch. So what I think I'll do is just take a little brown, add it to the colors we already have, and to help our branch not look so flat, using the same idea of water first and then color, let's add a stroke of water along the bottom so it has something to sit on. And then with our brush, let's add some color along the very bottom and along the top of that stroke of water, and let it run and create a natural highlight. So now he has a nice little branch to sit on. And we'll do the same thing up here, water first and then the color. Remember, we're keeping the color on the side, on the bottom and the top, and let it run into the water. Now she has a little stick to stand on. Now if you wanted, just like we've done in many of our other paintings, you could also spatter a little color on. Now I love these simple little birds, and I hope you have a really good time painting them too. Now I think that's super cute, and you could actually paint a whole bunch of them.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you found that lesson fun and simple and easy to do. And until next time, have fun and happy painting.